What happens when a CEO walks into one of his own cafes at midnight and sees a manager screaming at a tired worker just for asking to go home? Vaughn Keller hadn't worked a late-night shift in over a decade. That used to be his routine 15-hour days, sleeping in his car between shifts, building up the cafe business his dad left him. But over the last few years, the company had grown. 15 locations, over 80 employees, and layers of management meant he hadn't set foot behind a register in almost 2 years. Lately, though, things felt off. Customer reviews had started slipping. A few complaints had trickled in about one specific location, Store 12, a 24-hour cafe on the edge of town. It wasn't the worst-rated store, but the tone of the complaints bothered him. Cold service, tired staff. One review mentioned hearing yelling from the back. But when Vaughn asked his district manager about it, he got the usual. Just growing pains, staff turnover. We're handling it. He didn't buy it, so he shaved his beard, wore color contacts, and borrowed one of the new hire uniforms from the central office. The name tag read Eric. He signed up as a new trainee through a fake staffing agency his assistant set up for internal audits. Since he had never met the night crew at Store 12 and corporate rarely visited after dark, no one knew what he looked like. He showed up just before 10 p.m., right before the late shift began. Inside, the air felt heavy. The lights buzzed faintly. There were only 3 people on shift: Vera Zanders, a young barista who barely looked 20, a cook named Theo in the back, and the night supervisor, a woman named Darla. Darla looked to be in her late 40s, hair tied in a tight bun, jaw clenched like it had been for years. Vaughn introduced himself to Vera, who was wiping the counters. "Hey, I'm Eric, new temp." She gave a tired nod. "First day, good luck." Darla walked out from the back, arms crossed. "You're the guy they sent. You look like you've never held a mop." Vaughn kept his tone even. "I'll do whatever's needed, hum." She tossed him a rag. "Start wiping tables, and don't touch the espresso machine, that's mine." The shift dragged. Theo barely spoke. Vera worked hard, juggling orders, cleaning, and keeping the front in check. Darla mostly barked orders and scrolled on her phone from the office. Around 1:45 a.m., Vaughn noticed Vera start to wobble a little. She leaned against the counter, blinking hard. "You okay?" he asked, handing her a cup of water. "I'm fine," she whispered. "Just tired." "How long's your shift?" "Got here at 4. My relief called out, so Darla made me stay." Vaughn frowned. "That's over 10 hours, Vera nodded. "She said if I leave, I'm abandoning my post." Before he could respond, Vera walked over to Darla's office door and knocked gently. "Darla, I really need to go now. I've been here since 4 and I have class in the morning." The door swung open so fast it startled Vaughn. "You think I care about your schedule?" Darla snapped, stepping into the open, her voice cut through the cafe. "You're not leaving until I say you can. You're not special. Everyone here's tired. You think the world's gonna wait for you to finish school?" Vera's face flushed. She looked down, lips pressed tight. "I'm not asking for special treatment," she said softly. "Oh, you're asking, all right. You're asking to leave your shift during a staff shortage, which I've been covering for all week. You want to go home? Fine. Don't come back." Vaughn stepped forward instinctively. "That's not how you talk to people." Darla turned. "You don't tell me how to do my job, rookie." He clenched his jaw. His heart pounded. Vera grabbed her backpack. "I'll go, it's fine." "No, it's not," Vaughn said, louder this time. "You've been on your feet for 10 hours and she's treating you like trash." Darla narrowed her eyes. "You want to join her? I'll make one call and you're both gone." Vaughn took a breath. Then another. He walked toward the office, pulled out his phone, and typed in a code. The camera on the ceiling tilted slightly. "You've been on camera this whole time. Everything you just said, the way you treat your staff, it's recorded." Darla's face dropped. "Who the hell are you?" He took off his cap. "My name's Vaughn Keller. I own this company." "You just screamed at one of my employees for trying to go home after 10 hours. You're done here." Vera froze. "Wait, what?" Theo peeked out from the back. "He's the boss." Vaughn turned to Vera. "You did nothing wrong. Go home, get some rest." Darla tried to speak, but Vaughn raised a hand. Save it, you're finished. I'll talk to district tomorrow. He looked around the cafe at the mess, the exhaustion, the fear. Something had gone way off track here. He wasn't leaving until he fixed it. Vaughn stayed behind after Vera left. She didn't say much, just a quiet thank you before stepping out into the cold night. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and for a moment, the cafe fell into a thick silence. Darla stood near the office doorway, arms folded tightly. She looked less confident now. Her eyes flicked from Vaughn to the ceiling camera, then to the empty register counter. Theo emerged from the back, wiping his hands on a towel. He didn't say a word, just nodded at Vaughn and returned to the kitchen. "You're really Vaughn Keller?" Darla asked, her voice low and uncertain. "Yes. I didn't know, you didn't need to know, you just needed to treat people like human beings." He didn't raise his voice, he didn't need to. The weight of his words landed with finality. Darla didn't argue. She gave a shallow nod and walked to the back office. A few minutes later, she came out with her coat and purse, avoiding eye contact. She left without another word. Vaughn turned toward the front, surveying the cafe. The booths still had crumbs. The floor hadn't been swept. A couple customers lingered in the corner with half-empty cups, heads down. No one had cleaned the dishes in the sink. He rolled up his sleeves and got to work. He cleared tables, ran dishes, wiped down the condiment bar. He didn't mind the labor, he missed it in some strange way. His mind raced not from the work, but from what he'd seen. If Darla had acted like that in front of him without hesitation, how long had it been going on? And what else was happening when no one was watching? At around 3 in the morning, Theo came out again, rubbing his neck. "You staying the whole shift?" he asked. "Yeah." Theo nodded once, then walked behind the line and cracked 3 eggs into a pan. The smell of butter filled the cafe. He didn't ask Vaughn anything else, just kept working. A few minutes later, Vaughn noticed the front door open. A man in an oversized hoodie stepped in, glancing around. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "You guys still serving?" he asked. "Yup, what can I get you?" Vaughn said, stepping behind the counter. "Just coffee." "Black." As Vaughn poured it, the man added, "You knew, sort of." He handed him the cup. "Thanks," the man said, then sat at a corner table, hunched over like he was trying to disappear. Vaughn leaned toward Theo. "Regular. Yeah, name's Miles, comes in most nights, keeps to himself. Ever cause trouble? No. Just looks like life's been chewing on him a while." Vaughn nodded slowly. An hour passed. The cafe stayed quiet. Around 4:30, Vaughn sat at a side table, sipping water and reviewing the shift schedule he'd pulled from the office. He didn't recognize half the names, a lot of staff turnover. He pulled out a notepad and started making notes. Theo slid into the booth across from him without asking. He looked tired but awake. "You're not here just to fire Darla, are you?" "No." Theo rubbed his hands together slowly. "You're trying to see how bad it's gotten. I'm trying to see what I missed." Theo was quiet for a bit, then he said, "You didn't miss it, you were just too far away to hear it." Vaughn looked up. "She's been like that for months, maybe longer. Vera covers shifts she shouldn't. One girl quit last week during a rush, just walked out, said she couldn't take being screamed at anymore." "Why didn't anyone report it?" Theo gave him a look. "To who?" Darla was the report line. Anyone tried to go over her head, she'd find out. Schedules would get cut. Hours dropped. Or worse, stuck on back-to-back closing and opening shifts. Vaughn felt his jaw tighten. "I thought we had a zero retaliation policy." Theo gave a bitter laugh. "We do, on paper." Vaughn tapped his pen against the notepad. "What about you?" he asked. "Why stay?" Theo shrugged. "I got a kid. Flexible hours here, it's not the worst kitchen I've worked in, I just kept my head down." He leaned back in the booth. "But Vera, she doesn't have to be here, she's smart. She's got something ahead of her, if she burns out here, that's on us." Vaughn closed the notepad. "She won't burn out." By 6, sunlight had begun to creep through the blinds. The cafe stayed quiet, but Vaughn noticed the energy shift when the early morning supervisor arrived, a woman named Janine in a faded blue zip-up and a lanyard full of keys. She walked in with a half yawn, saw Vaughn behind the counter and paused. "You're not on my roster. I was covering." She gave him a long look. Okay, covering for who, Darla? Janine's expression changed. It wasn't fear. It was relief. She gone? Yeah. Janine exhaled hard and dropped her bag by the office door. About time. She didn't ask questions. She just got to work, pulling a clipboard from the wall and checking inventory. Vaughn followed her. Janine, can I ask you something? Shoot. Have you noticed anything off with how the night shift's been run? She stopped writing and looked at him. I've filed 5 internal complaints about Darla in the last 6 months. Not one was followed up on. Last one I got a warning for procedural overreach. After that, I stopped trying. Vaughn felt something cold in his chest. Who gave you the warning? District manager, Lyle. He nodded once. Thank you. He stepped out of the office and made a call. It rang once before a groggy voice answered. Yeah, it's Vaughn. Meet me at store 12. Now, a long pause. All right. By the time Lyle arrived, the cafe had picked up. A few regulars, some commuters, a couple students on laptops. Vaughn was behind the counter, sleeves rolled, apron still on. He didn't get out of character, just waved Lyle into the office. When the door shut, Vaughn turned. I know about the complaints. Lyle blinked. Look, Vaughn, there's a process. No, there's complicity. You buried 5 formal complaints from Janine and ignored a dozen others. You protected Darla because she hit numbers, and you didn't want to deal with staffing changes. Hold on, you retaliated against an employee for filing a report. You've created a structure where fear keeps people silent. That ends today. Lyle's face paled. You're letting me go? I'm terminating your position effective immediately. HR will be in touch. Leave your badge and keys. Lyle stared at him for a few seconds, then slowly removed his lanyard and placed it on the desk. I guess I should have seen this coming. You should have stopped it from ever happening. He left without another word. Vaughn stepped out of the office and scanned the cafe. Janine was helping a new barrister refill the pastry case. Theo was plating 2 breakfast sandwiches. Vera hadn't returned yet, but he planned to call her later. Not as a CEO, as someone who owed her an apology and a future. Vaughn waited until after the breakfast rush before calling Vera. He stepped outside, pacing near the alley where the delivery trucks usually pulled in. The sky had turned a pale blue, the sun just beginning to stretch above the rooftops. He spoke plainly, asked if she could come in around noon, not for a shift but to talk. She hesitated, unsure, but agreed. Inside, Janine had already started rearranging the schedule board with a dry erase marker. She didn't ask for permission, she didn't need to. Vaughn watched as she adjusted shifts to plug the gaps left by Darla and Lyle. Her handwriting was messy but deliberate, looping names and drawing arrows between overlapping hours. Won't hold long, she muttered, but it'll buy us 60 hours to figure this out. Vaughn nodded. Pull anyone from store 14, 2 part-timers. They'll cover tonight. Not ideal, but they know the system. Good. He turned toward Theo, who was filling out a vendor sheet at the prep counter, his apron dusted with flour. You ever done shift lead work? Years ago, at a diner in Akron. Why? Because I need someone steady until we find a real supervisor. You're calm, reliable, and people listen when you talk. Theo looked up. I'm not looking to climb a ladder. This isn't about climbing, it's about keeping people safe. Theo folded the sheet in half, tucked it under the register, and gave a small nod. I'll do it. For now. By late morning, corporate had sent over a temporary HR rep named Natalie, someone Vaughn trusted from a previous crisis at a different location. She wore a navy blouse, hair pulled back, clipboard in hand. She didn't waste time. Start with exit paperwork for Lyle and Darla, she said, sitting across from Vaughn in the back office. Already drafted, I'll deliver in person, no appeals. Not a chance. And the retaliation warnings, flagged, will audit the last 6 months' reports across all stores. If any were suppressed, I'll bring it to legal. Good, at least something was moving. At 12:20, Vera walked in, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She stood just inside the doorway, unsure where to go. Vaughn came out from the office immediately. He didn't call her over, he walked to her. Thanks for coming, he said. She gave a cautious nod. You said this wasn't a shift. It's not. He gestured to a booth near the window. They sat across from one another. She didn't touch the water he offered, just kept her hands under the table, fingers interlocked. I owe you an apology, he said. She looked at him, confused. You weren't the one who yelled at me. No, but I created the space where someone like her could. She didn't say anything for a moment, then her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I was going crazy. Like maybe I was being too sensitive, or lazy, or not tough enough. You're not. She made me feel like asking to rest was weakness, like I had to prove something every shift. You don't. You already proved it by showing up, by staying longer than you should have, by never letting it affect how you treated customers. Vera exhaled slowly. Is she gone? Yes, so is the district manager who protected her. And what happens now? We fix it. Vaughn leaned forward slightly. Not with promises, with structure. Your hours will be capped at 8 unless you volunteer for more. No more back-to-back closings and opens. No more guilt tripping people into staying late. Vera looked skeptical. People say that kind of stuff after something blows up. But it doesn't last. That's why I'm staying here. For the next 3 weeks, I'm not going back to the main office. I'm working this store, every shift. Her eyes widened. You mean on the floor? Yes, I need to see the cracks up close. Vera gave a small laugh, not joyful, more disbelieving. That's gonna freak people out. Probably, Vaughn admitted, but they deserve to be freaked out for the right reasons. She nodded slowly. Okay. Also, he added, you're getting a paid day off this week, mandatory. I can't afford that. You won't lose a cent, it's paid. That's not a suggestion. She finally reached for the water. Across the cafe, Natalie stepped out of the office and approached Vaughn. We may have another problem, she said quietly. He stood, and Vera returned to her seat near the front window. Natalie led him to the back where a young man with a delivery badge was leaning against the prep counter, arms crossed. His name tag read Marcus. What's going on? Vaughn asked. Marcus barely looked at him. Your kitchen guy just told me I can't drop the produce in back anymore. Theo, standing nearby, didn't look up from the inventory chart. I said you can't dump crates in the walkway. You block the entire line. Nearly tripped over a box of onions last week. Marcus scoffed. I've been doing it that way for 6 months. And it's been wrong for 6 months, Theo replied. Vaughn looked between them. Is this a regular issue? Every other delivery, Theo said. He shows up early, throws stuff down, doesn't check counts and leaves, doesn't sign the log. Just scribbles something and walks. That true? Vaughn asked Marcus. Marcus shrugged. I got 40 stops, can't babysit every drop. That's not babysitting, that's your job. Marcus straightened. You the owner? Yes. Then you should know your guy doesn't talk to people right. Actually, Vaughn said, voice quiet but firm, he's been respectful, you've been negligent, you're not just dropping vegetables. You're creating safety hazards and skipping verification. Marcus rolled his eyes. Whatever, man, fire me then. I can't, you don't work for us, but I can call your dispatch and report it, and I will. Marcus muttered something under his breath and walked out without another word. Vaughn followed him to the dock, watched him slam the truck door and drive off. Natalie appeared beside him. You want me to file the formal complaint? Send it directly to the supplier. If they don't switch reps, we find another vendor. Back inside, Vaughn returned to the office and pulled up the cross-store transfer logs. He noticed something strange. Store 12 had logged more than double the standard supply usage for the past 3 months, especially on milk, syrups, and to-go cups. But sales hadn't increased. He flagged Janine. You ever see anything weird with inventory counts? She leaned over his shoulder. Weird how? Like supplies going missing, or being marked as used when they weren't. Janine squinted at the screen. Darla used to take home crates of almond milk, said she was testing shelf life. I didn't ask questions. Vaughn stared at the monitor. She wasn't testing anything. She also kept a second key to the back, came in on Sundays when no one was scheduled. He leaned back in the chair. We're going to need a forensic audit on storage records. I'll call logistics, Natalie offered from the doorway. That evening, Vaughn worked the closing shift with Janine and a young barista named Louis. The energy was different, quieter, steadier. Customers lingered longer. No one rushed. At 10:30, Vera returned not to work but to sit with her laptop and a stack of textbooks. Vaughn caught her glancing up once or twice, maybe checking if he really meant what he'd said. He did. Janine approached him during close-out. "You really planning to stay 3 weeks? At least." She raised an eyebrow. "You sure you can handle it?" "No," he said honestly. "But I'm not leaving it to someone else anymore." The following week began with rain. Not the kind that drums softly on windows, but the heavy, wind-driven kind that soaked through jackets in seconds. Vaughn arrived at store 12 just after 5 in the evening, umbrella snapped inside out, hair damp, apron already tied. The cafe smelled of cinnamon and Bleach. Louis had just finished wiping down the pastry display. Janine handed him a fresh towel. Storms killing foot traffic. "Might be a slow night." "That's fine," Vaughn said. "We need the breather." Louis tapped the side of the register. "Online orders are steady, though, probably dinner shifts getting drinks for delivery drivers." Vaughn nodded. "Let's stay sharp." Rain makes people edgy. By 7, the cafe filled with the hum of milk steaming and paper bags rattling. Vaughn moved between bar and register, keeping pace without hovering. He noticed that behind the counter, Louis had started prepping drinks 2 steps ahead of the order queue. His timing was surgical. "You been working bar long?" Vaughn asked during a lull. Louis shrugged. "Started last year. I used to be all register, but I asked to cross-train." "Why?" He glanced at the espresso machine. "Bar's the only place people really talk to you. You hand them coffee, they drop their guard, you hear things." Vaughn leaned on the counter. "What have you heard lately?" Louis kept his eyes on the milk pitcher. "Most regulars missed Vera. One guy asked if she transferred. Another thought she quit. People noticed. She's back next week." "Reduced hours, though." Louis nodded once. "That's good. She shouldn't get burned out for trying to be decent." A delivery driver came in, soaked from the knees down. Vaughn helped him load the to-go carriers, double-checked the order, and sent him off with a fresh towel to dry his hands. By 9, the storm had thickened. Power flickered once. Vaughn walked the floor twice, checking the emergency lighting and restocking the napkin holders. He passed a man sitting in the corner, laptop open, charger tucked under the baseboard. The man looked up briefly. "You Vaughn?" "I am." The man stood. His badge read Gregory, and he wore a windbreaker with the logo of the cafe's primary cleaning vendor. "Corporate sent me. Said you wanted to audit night cleanings." "That's right. You're the crew lead." Gregory scratched his neck. "Used to be. Got bumped down to field after I reported a new guy for skipping bathrooms. Manager said I was making waves." "Who's the manager?" "Name's Richie. Runs the regional contract for this whole district." Vaughn motioned toward the back. "Walk with me." They stepped into the mop room behind the prep kitchen. Gregory opened his duffel and pulled out a small binder. Inside were checklists. Most were blank. A few had signatures but no timestamps. "That's what I've got for the last month," he said. "Your store's been marked cleaned even when no one showed up." "Why didn't you go higher?" "I did. Got reassigned within a week. My hours dropped by half." Vaughn took a photo of the binder pages with his phone, then stepped out and called Natalie. She answered immediately. "Find the vendor contact for cleaning services. We're terminating the district contract. Pull security footage for the last 4 weeks and build a case." "Understood." Gregory waited near the mop sink. "You're not going to get much help from their end. They'll close ranks." "I'm not asking for help, I'm cutting them out." Gregory let out a breath. "Appreciate that. You still want field work?" He hesitated. "I like working, just not for people who treat it like a game. I'll get you reassigned to a different vendor, one of our smaller crews. They need leads." "That'd mean a lot." "When's your shift end?" "Midnight. Stick around after. I'll introduce you to someone from facilities." Gregory nodded and returned to his duffel. Back on the floor, Vaughn noticed something odd. A woman he didn't recognize was standing near the pickup counter, tapping her foot, arms crossed. She wasn't looking at the menu. Instead, she kept scanning the staff behind the bar. Her coat had an embroidered name on the sleeve. T. Halbridge Regional Ops, Lewis whispered. She's been watching us for 10 minutes, said she was waiting for a refund. Vaughn approached. Can I help you? Her eyes narrowed. Who are you? He didn't answer immediately. I asked first. She crossed her arms tighter. Tanya Halbridge. I oversee compliance for operational vendors. I'm here because my team flagged 2 cancellation notices from this store in the last 3 days, cleaning and logistics, both justified. I'll be the judge of that. No, you won't, Vaughn said. I will. Vaughn Keller. This is my store. Tanya blinked. You're the one who went undercover? Yes. She took a breath, switched tones. Look, I'm sure you had your reasons, but cutting multiple vendors without a formal review could expose the company. We don't keep partners who retaliate against whistleblowers or falsify logs. I understand, but there's protocol. Protocol allowed abuse to go unchecked for months. It's not our standard anymore. She looked ready to argue but stopped. Then I assume you'll be documenting your decisions. Already have. You'll get the files by morning. She adjusted the strap on her bag. I'll forward them to legal. Good. She turned and left without asking for a drink. Lewis exhaled the moment the door closed. Was that real? It was necessary. The rest of the night ran smooth. Janine arrived to assist with close. Vaughn helped Lewis empty the syrup wells and rewrap the pastry case. At one point, Theo called to confirm his work schedule for the next week. Vaughn kept it clear. You're on 4 days, no more than 8 hours. That's the new standard. By 1 in the morning, the café was spotless. Gregory had finished inspecting the backline and was sitting near the window when Vaughn approached. Someone from facilities will meet you here at 11 tomorrow. They already have your file. Gregory stood. Thanks, most places wouldn't bother. I'm not most places. Outside, the rain had stopped. Street lamps flickered back to full strength. Vaughn stood at the window, watching the water drain into the curb gutters. The store felt different. Not fixed, not yet, but steadier. Like the foundation had been uncovered and reinforced, Janine walked past, holding the schedule clipboard. You still planning to work the weekend? Yes, she gave a quiet nod. You're doing more than patching holes, people feel it. I have to, I let this place drift. Then it's a good thing you came back. For the first time in weeks, Vaughn believed that, not because everything was solved, but because the silence was gone. People weren't afraid to speak anymore. And that was the beginning of a better company.